So now that I have these cut, I'm going to press them into triangles, right sides together. And I'm going to do that to all of these. And then I'm going to go sew them all together. 1/4 inch seam right down either side, doesn't matter which side. And you could chain piece all of these together to get them all done. And then I'll be right back for the next part. All right, I've stitched down one side of all of these. And I've got them all chained pieced together. And now I'm going to tear them apart. And now we're going to open these up. Well, actually, we need to trim off the bottom corner just before the stitching so that they make a nice little point. And we're going to turn them inside out. Got my point turner here, and or my, what do you call these things? Turner thing. And I'm going to push that out. And we want this seam to go right down the center, so it'll look a lot like a Dresden plate thing. I also, there's a little bit more that needs to be pulled out of here. And I have this little, like, eyeglasses screwdriver. And very carefully, I can go and even get that further out here. I have yet to have this go through fabric, but you never know. So I'm going to go very carefully. There's a nice point there. And I make sure that my seam is laying open on the inside. And I'm going to put it on my mat. And we are going to press it. A little steam. And then this little flap that's on this side just gets tucked inside here. So let's flatten it out. And the two tops are even. And then I will press that. So they're flat. And I will make a whole bunch of these. There's no snowman on the front. If you have fabric that you'd like your design to show through, please pay attention to that. I have one little one, but it's probably going to get covered up by the trim that goes across here, but that's okay. Maybe there'll be another one that will show the snowman. So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to trim the bottom of this so we have a nice little turn. So I'm kind of getting really close to the stitching and doing a diagonal cut to the top of the, and you can finger press this if you want before you get to the turning. So I'm going to put that through. Get this out, so if I need some more on both sides here. That seems to be good. I'll try one more just to see if that helps get it a little bit more. A little bit more was given. Okay. So then we get that so it's centered down the middle, and the seam is flat down the center. We'll press that. Then we'll fold this flap inside. Sure it's laying flat and in all the way. And we'll press it again. And there we go. We have another one. And so we'll just keep making these and lining them up on the until we get however many we want, or for however long our little attachment is. So I'll continue to make these until they're done, and then we'll work on a binding options. Okay, so I've laid a few flags out on my board here. The flags are 3 inches at the top using that 4-inch square, and you can use any size square you want to make these flags. You can make them as big or as small as you want. I've made one that was as small as 2 inches. You don't want to go that route though, I'm just saying. Anyway, so I laid them out so that they were 1 inch apart on this side and 1/2 inch on this side, just to see which I liked better. And either is good, but I'm going to go with 1/2 inch. So I had to do some math here. I've got 20 flags. I don't have all of them made yet, but I'm going to work on that. I'm going to have 20 flags, and at 3 inches a piece. So I'm trying to determine how much binding I'm going to need. And I'm going to use a traditional binding, which is something that's going to look like this. I tested out a 2-inch piece. So I'll cut out a 2-inch piece of fabric, fold it in half, fold each side to the center, and then fold that in half. And it's kind of like a binding. And you will lay each little flag inside. And I made a sample just to make sure that that was going to be the right size. I see that not being a problem. I decided that was going to be a good size binding, 2 inches. So now I'm trying to determine how much of this I need to cut to finish off my flags. So I have 20 flags at 3 inches each. And I want to put a 1/2 inch between each one of them. So I'm going to multiply the number of flags I have by the 3 inches, which gives me 60, and then my 1/2 inch by the same number of flags, give or take. And this is just a guesstimate. You want a little extra hanging off each side so that you can make a little tie off or something. And that gives me an additional 10 inches. And that's now a total of 70 inches that's just to make the flags. Now that doesn't include the additional 5 inches that I want on each end. I'm going to fold over the side and make a loop on the ends so that I can attach it somewhere. It doesn't have to be that long, and it might end up being shorter than that, just enough to attach it to the tree somehow. So if I didn't add that, you just take then that 70, add the 10 inches for the 5-inch tails on either side, and that would give me a total of 80. I'm going to divide that by 36 because that's yards, is 36 inches. So I'm going to need 2.2 yards of fabric. So I have cut 3 2-inch strips from this little scrap of fabric that I had. That is the red and white stripe. That is and what I did was I put this on the line, and I counted the number of squares I had here, which was 8, that I could get a full. I'm going to cut off some extras here, but I definitely can get 8 inches times 4, because this is folded over. So there's 4 strips, 4 layers of fabric underneath here. So I've got 8 times 4, 32, and then I have to get my calculator. And I can get 3 strips out of here, and this will be plenty to do all 20 flags. and I'm going to cut off the selvage that's on here, and I'm going to attach these together using the, I'm actually going to just do a straight attachment. Okay, I'm about to sew my binding together, and I'm going to change my stitch length from 2.5 to a 1.8, and sew this together. And then I'll fold over the top piece and lay it there and put the third piece on top of that, and we'll get that sewn together. All right, I've got 4 more of the squares to finish here, so I folded them over right sides together to make these little triangles, and I'm going to sew down one side. And I chose this side on this one because I've got a little bit of the selvage showing there. So I'll finish the other 3, and then we'll go to the table and do the binding. All right, I've got my binding here on my ironing mat, and I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to press it. Put a crease down the center of my binding, and I'm going to do this all the way through all the 3 pieces that I have sewn together. And I'll be back when I get this finished, and we'll do the next part of that. When I get to the seam, I'm going to press it open and then fold it over just with my hand. And then press that and continue on the strip. Okay, now that I've got the crease down the center of my binding, I'm going to fold over one side to the center and press that to the line. And I'm going to do this all the way through. And then when I get done with that, I'm going to press this side down so it meets up with that other piece of fabric. And I'm going to do that all the way through. I'm going to blow on this a little bit, it's a little hot, before I touch it again. And then I'm going to fold it in half. And that's my binding. And I will do this for the rest of the strip. And then I will be back and we will attach our flags inside the strip. Okay, I have my binding created, and I'm going to lay it on my mat here, and this is the best way that I have to measure this. You can just use a ruler, set it up against a ruler on your cutting mat that may have some gridded lines on it. But I'm going to start 5 inches in from the edge so that I have that little gap here so that I can make a tie off on the end of it. So then I'm going to put open it up and place my pendant or my little flag, whatever you want to call these things. They're called so many different things. And I'm going to lay it in there between the 3-inch mark here. I'm going to grab a pin and I'm going to hold it on in place where it's at. And hold on, I got off track here. And then I can take and use this 1/2 inch mark to know where I need to place my next pendant, as I decided I wanted to do 1/2 inch, and that's what I did my math for. So it doesn't have to be exact, but I at least have somewhat of a 1/2 inch space in between my flags, or however big of a distance you wanted to have between yours. And I'm just going to put 1 pin in to hold these, because as you're sewing this down, I can show you how you can make adjustments and move things around if it falls out of place. So then I'm just going to keep going in that instance and place a flag in here and pin it down every 1/2 inch. So I'll place this one in here at this point, just using this mat, these lines as a guide, some sort of a guide. I don't think it has to be 100% complete or accurate, but we could put the pin in this way. However, if I'm going to sew, I kind of want to be able to pull my pin out. And so I'm going to stick it in as I'm sewing. I want to be able to pull my pin out. I didn't feel like I had any fabric back there. Okay. And pin that into place. And then I'll just keep moving it down and placing it in here until I'm ready to sew. Okay, I've got all 20 flags pinned into my binding, and I've got, my math was bad, I've got a lot left over. I'd rather have more than not enough. And I knew that when I did this, because I think I did 3 strips, and they were 32 inches long. And this is, I think, still longer than what my math expected. But again, I'd rather have more than not enough. So I'm just going to cut this off at the 5 inches. So this is where the last pendant ended. And here is 5 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to cut this at this point, or the other option is to make more pendants and continue on until you've filled the entire binding. Those are your options. So now I've got all of this ready to go. And I'm going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew it up. Okay, I put my binding in so that the opening is on my right hand side, and I changed out my foot. I'm not using my this foot that has the little ledge on it for the 1/4 inch, because that is, I want my stitching to be closer to the other edge. So I changed it out my foot so I can get a little closer to the other edge. And that way I can get more of the flag into the binding. So I'm going to start stitching from one end, and I'm kind of watching, and I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little ledge next to where my needle goes through this hole, and I'm going to kind of follow that as I go down the way here. And I still have my stitching at 1.8, so I'm going to change it to a 2.5 and just stitch on down until I get to my flag. Got these sitting on my lap underneath me here. So I'm going to take my pin out and hold down my flag as I go through stitching this. I can go slower if I feel like I need to have more control. And then move on to the next one. And I see I pulled that out. So I'm going to take my pin out and I'm going to shove I'm going to make sure all of this here is coming after is in a decent shape here. And it looks like I need to pull some of that over and start stitching. And I'm reaching the next flag. And I'm going to take my pin out and hold it with my fingers. I'll leave the pin in for a little bit here. And I'll take my pin out. I have a magnetic bowl next to me that I throw my pins into. And I'm going to just continue to stitch this down. We're getting to the end here. And we'll just sew right to the end. And I'll lift my foot. We'll take this off and then we'll see how it turned out.